Thank you to our amazing panelists. That was a good one. All right, guys, next we have a sponsor spotlight. We want to thank MNP for sponsoring this, making it all possible, paying for lunch, and getting you guys here. So Eugene Ng from MNP will now join us on stage. Welcome, Eugene.
Thank you.
Oh, you're right there.
Thank you. Vendor presentation, 2:20 p.m. I bet you guys are thrilled. You can check your emails for a few minutes. Yes, a little bit, a little time off. So I'm with a company called MNP. My name is Eugene. I lead the cybersecurity practice for incident response and managed security operation services. Hopefully we'll get you guys see my presentation. Fantastic. So the title of this vendor spotlight is "The Haystack Should Be Bigger Than You Think." So we've all heard the idiom, finding the needle in the haystack. You guys have heard this? Yes? Please, it's 2:20 in the afternoon. For the love of, just help me get through this, please. Now, the needle in the haystack. So who's going to help us find the needle in the haystack? Nothing better than doing a little Mythbusters. You guys seen this video at all? Finding the needle in the haystack? All right, it's a 60-second video, and hopefully it'll set the stage for what I'm going to talk about. How many people think they're going to find the needle in the haystack? If you saw it, they drop the hay down, there's a vibrating ramp, earth magnets, and a pool of water. So we got one person that thinks they're going to find the needle in the haystack. Nobody else? Maybe? Well, you got to stay tuned to find out. Now, this is a CISO conference. You guys, I'm sure, know the average time for breach detection. Anybody? Throw out a number. Too long. 197 days. Exactly. 200 days. Yeah. Roughly 6 months. You guys know what you can do in 6 months? You can build a house in 6 months. You can actually build a Rolls Royce in 6 months. You can build a Corolla in 13 hours. You can look like that. I was actually going to cut out the head and put my own body for a 6-month body transformation. I'm going to start that tomorrow. Or if you're so inclined, you can grow your own cannabis plant at home in 6 months. So it takes a long time for the average breach detection. Now, you guys have heard the term as well. History is not a predictor of the future, but it's kind of the best thing that we have. And when I was going through this needle in the haystack presentation, the healthcare industry actually came across a very similar challenge back in 2005 when we talked about electronic health records and this explosion of patient information. And really, the challenge for them was going to be, how do we filter all of this electronic data from all these sensors and machines that are monitoring for patient care to be able to come up with that needle in the haystack? And what they said in 2005 is, we need better ways of human and machine filtering in order to understand these events and alerts that are coming through from our patients in the ER. Now, this statistic, or this saying here, focuses specifically on healthcare, but if you read this passage on the front, it basically relates almost identically to the challenges that we're facing today in cybersecurity. All right? Traditionally, it's been incomplete, it's fragmented, and we're getting sources of information from a ton of different areas and events. Now, if we move fast forward to 2016, we talk about these false positives and challenges that we have. There's actually a recent Cisco study that was done. 50% of all events and alerts are actually looked at. Half of those are false positives. Half of those are investigated, and only half of those are actually triaged and actioned. Okay? Now, in the healthcare industry, what they did is they put together this study of nurses in ICUs to determine how well and how capable they were of figuring out these false positives in the intensive care unit. What's interesting is in the ICU, they had 9 different machines on average that are studying, blood pressure, heart pace, lung, a whole bunch of kind of medical settings. And about 4 of these devices would generate alarms, and each one of these medical devices would generate about 39 alarms per hour that the nurses were then expected to investigate and notify. False alarms are about 64% of all the alarms that they investigated. Now, in the security operations team that we have, I can tell you that even for us, false positives, the percentage of false positives that we receive is actually even higher than that what we get from our tools and techniques today. So I'm not sure what you guys are dealing with, but it's a huge challenge. What's interesting too is the study concluded by saying, if the nurses actually tweaked those patient monitoring devices to the patient themselves, how old they were, the medical condition that they had, they would actually do a much better job of responding and identifying to those alarms. What they found was in only about 20% of the cases did they actually take the time to tailor those events and alarms to the specific patient and to the specific condition of that individual. Same thing holds true in cybersecurity. I don't think we spend enough time collectively determining what the alert protocol is and tweaking it to our own specific networks and systems. What's interesting too is the obstacles to proper management of these alarms. The first one is with frequent false alarms, leads to reduced attention or response to alarms when they actually occur. If you read through those, 9 different obstacles, almost each one of those can relate specifically to cybersecurity. Lack of training, difficulty in setting alarms, over-reliance on alarms to call attention to patient problems. Okay? To the point where, and there's been a number of cases, but I'll just highlight this one, for alarm fatigue that actually resulted in the patient's death. So this individual went into hospital, I think, to get a pacemaker installed. So he woke up in the morning, had breakfast with his family, walked around the hospital. Around 5 o'clock, a bunch of different alarms went off, and the nurses didn't pay any attention to it. And at 6 o'clock, finally, the critical alarm where the patient stopped breathing, the nurses actually went in, and he ended up passing away. What's interesting is after not interesting that the patient died, but after they did the study of kind of the resulting action or what the root cause was, the nurses basically said every single piece of new technology that we receive generates a new alarm. I'm sure you guys have a list of different technologies that are going to be implemented this year. They generate a new alarm, and what happens? It gets added to that stack of hay. To the point where this specific patient or this specific nurse talks about if the patients move, if they cough, if they roll over in bed, an alarm gets generated. Have you guys taken a look at your EDR solution recently? How many false positives do you get on your endpoint detection and response? A lot? I'm assuming you get a lot. Don't worry. I already know the answer. Now, when we focus on the IT or the security events, right, we have almost the exact same challenge. So if you take a look at the list of events that we have up there, which one of those are important? I would argue they're all important. But how are you going to investigate, triage every single one of those? It's impossible. It's impossible. So what happens is, if we kind of relate this challenge that we have back to the frameworks and what they're actually telling us to do, all I did is I just took the NIST CSF, PCI, Security Standards Council, actually has this map. So the two that we deal with most often is the CSF and PCI. So this is what the frameworks are telling us to do, right? Create a baseline of network operations, expected data flows for users. Detected events are analyzed to understand attack targets and methods. You guys do this today with your SOC analysts? collect all the event data from all these different sources and correlate that information. It's a lot of data. And in fact, when we do our incident response investigations, I would say 99% of our investigations, the client does not actually have enough of these events to make a conclusive decision on what actually occurred from start to finish. So the frameworks are telling us we need to collect all this information and events, but we're not doing it. Or when we do it, we get bombarded with false positives, right? So we kind of have this signal to noise ratio issue that we're all kind of trying to deal with. Continuing on, right? In the continuous monitoring section, incident alert thresholds are established. The network is monitored to detect potential cybersecurity events. So, is it possible that we expand this stack of hay that we're dealing with to still find the needle? Let's go back to Mythbusters. There it is, right? If we have the right techniques, we have the right tools, we can find the needle in the haystack. So when we kind of correlate that back to what we're dealing with our customer IR investigation deficiencies, I can tell you that number one is this alert protocol. Most of our clients don't have any type of alert protocol defined. So these are what types of actions are actually going to be submitted to the SOC, going to be escalated. There needs to be a different tier of alerts and events to be able to identify. 100% of the time, limited logging or insufficient logging capabilities. We've seen time and time again on server hosts where the event logs, we were asking for, I think, DHCP logs, which client received this IP address, and the server event log still was default. It's set to overwrite every 60 minutes. So how can you do a proper investigation when you don't even have the proper size of stack of hay? And finally, the lack of overall visibility. Time and time again, we go into organizations, they just don't have the network visibility. They don't have the proper, like I said, server logging enabled, or all the other device logging into a centralized location that you can then investigate in a timely manner. So what do we need? Invest in more visibility, increase capacity for logging. This is one of those interesting kind of turning points, I think, in our industry where there's a ton of vendors that are out there in a cloud kind of environment. I think logging is one of the best ways that we can leverage this cloud service, the elasticity to be able to send our logging information to some other host. It's backed up, it's recoverable. You need 12 months of logging data cold. I don't know if you guys knew that from a compliance standard for PCI, 3 months hot standby, 12 months cold. And finally, the last piece is to leverage AI and data models. I was just having a chat backstage with Ali from Durham College, who leads the AI practice and is doing some research on cybersecurity. We're kind of doing the same thing within our Security Operations Center, and I would strongly suggest you folks look at your own network environments and look and leverage data models to look for that needle in the haystack. And I'll give you an example of what that looks like, okay? So what we have here is, I wouldn't say a simple case or a simple example, but if you remember that list of logs and events that we had shown up earlier in the presentation, what we're looking for when we talk about AI in log monitoring and event detection, what we're actually talking about essentially are data models, right? When did suspicious domain activity occur on that host? if it occurred within a certain period of time, that also correlates to lateral movement, lateral automated replication. Maybe that host was doing some port sweeps on the internal environment. Maybe it was doing a darknet scan, right? Why is it looking for devices that don't actually exist on the network? So when you can correlate all that information, again, just using very simple data models, then what you can do is you can create a more of a risk-based approach to prioritizing data events within your security operations center. Okay? One of the things that we've also been asked to assist with a number of our clients is kind of an internal audit capacity, where they're asking us to say, can you come in and assess our incident response capabilities? And I think most of you either have completed or have heard of tabletop exercises, right, where you're bringing your executives and you talk about I'm not going to use ransomware because I hate that example, but let's talk about a successful phishing campaign, and maybe they got access to a user's mailbox in 365. What we're finding now is that's great kind of as a step one. Step two is then to actually put this into practice. So if you take that same example, let's say a user gets compromised, they have access to a machine on the internal network. Within 4 hours, can we find every single device, piece of data, structured, unstructured, what traffic, where that workstation went for that specific user account? Ask your teams. In 4 hours, show me everything that Jane Doe touched within the past 3 months and see what your team comes back with, right? Because I know, I'm sure you guys are aware, the new PIPEDA Annex, right, for breach notification, OSFI's new breach notification. OSFI's, I think, was set to 72 hours, whereas PIPEDA's was more best effort, whenever you can kind of get to it and you can make a strong determination. But this is a key change and maturity in your incident response program. And if we go back to Mythbusters, if you kind of put all these things into play, this is the level of satisfaction you will receive. I got 4 minutes for questions. I know it was quick, dirty, but that's what they told the vendors to do. So thanks a lot for your time.